they just adapted the logo into a cookie that somebody had the pleasure of baking. I mean, it's just like to show you that you can be creative within the concept. The next one, please. So yeah, Sweden loves WikiGap, yeah, but who else? I mean, maybe you, maybe somebody else. And we are actually, when we try to find new concept and new partnership in the foreign affairs, we have this called co-diplomacy method. It might sound weird to you, but basically it's easy. We believe that you're always more stronger together, and that it's very important to, like, you know, adapt your thematic or the way you work with something that's interested in the local community. So that's why these are the 4 C's. Maybe that they could be useful for you when you try to, you know, make projects in your global moment as well. Like conversation, what should we talk about? What's the issue? In this case, it's gender equality. Maybe there are other gaps. Maybe there are other things that you would want to work on. Connectors, who are the ones that could connect your messages? I mean, and don't think only within your own organization, think wider, think broader. I mean, I think why WikiGap was such a success, if I may have a little bit like a prejudice, I think it's because Wikipedians, you're super good and technical and know all this stuff on the how do you edit and so on.
You don't sit like that.
No, sorry. Okay, yeah, cool. And whereas my job is external relations, partnerships, talking, selling the project, so to speak. So that was a perfect match sometimes with like something very extrovert, but whereas something a little bit more introverts. So we think that, you know, finding partnerships like that it's super important to spur development. Cooperation, who shares your call, who could you work with, and where should you act? In this case, yeah, of course on Wikipedia, but it could be maybe through some others of your wiki projects or somewhere else. Maybe learning sessions, or maybe talking about the tool of Wikipedia to students or whatever, depending on what you want to achieve. Yeah. So stronger together, what we've seen in WikiGap, for instance, this is from Tunisia. So this is, I think, a colleague from yours or someone from Wikimedia Tunisia. The embassy was involved in connecting with the universities who made the invitation to the student to come to the workshop. And this nice building, beautiful workshop was actually provided by Andersson, which is a big Swedish IT company. So just like to mention that there are a lot of people that might have an interest in supporting this project or your project. So what we've seen in WikiGap, a lot of university partners, of course, all over the world, a lot of local tech organizations, women's organizations, the business world, and then we know that there's a lot of other international organizations that were really interested in WikiGap from the beginning, especially UNESCO. Is anyone from UNESCO here? No. Okay. So basically, we had a little fight. No, no, but Wiki for Women, it's exactly the same idea and the same concept. And sometimes we did it together, and sometimes they did Wiki for Women, and we did ours, but with the same Wikimedia volunteers. But at least that goes to the same objective. We're fine with that. But they're on board. UN Women, IMS, huge international organization. IMS did this super interesting things in Somalia. Mogadishu, we read the report, we were just like, wow, this is amazing how they engaged volunteers from their project in Mogadishu to come to Nairobi and do a Wikipedia workshop in order to edit and to close the gaps on Somali Wikipedia. This is just like amazing. There are a lot of other countries friendly countries, or countries that also after us have started to working with the feminist foreign policies, such as Canada, France, the Netherlands, and of course our Nordic neighbors, which I think also you can reach out to if you want to have a partner for a WikiGap project. I talked to somebody from Ghana yesterday, and he said that you don't understand, it's not easy. I can just not walk into an embassy like that. And yeah, I know, sometimes we forget because we are Swedish and our system works differently, but that's why we have us, so Wikimedia Sweden or myself, so that we can connect you to the right people in the right country, to at least spark off an eventual collaboration. So I think that was my last slide. Yeah, thank you. And before, I would like to hear your thoughts about this project, questions, ideas, how to develop it, how to make it better. I would like to give the word. Do you want to say something?
I think it's very but no, it's just, I think this is a lovely project. I think it's so scalable as well, which I think is very intriguing. Even though we've done it a couple of years now, there's plenty of different possibilities and plenty of different new partners we haven't approached yet. A lot of the embassies are still not on board, I haven't tried it yet, so I think there's still a very large growth potential to it. And in the countries where it's happened, there's already expertise, there's already a built up cooperation, so it can only grow bigger, which is wonderful. I mean, we've seen some countries where they started in 2018 in one city, but in 2019 they did it in 2 or 3 cities. So they can scale, even though the embassy was not in place in 3 cities. They then found different partners, so they could have 3 parallel events. Because for different geographical reasons, where the country is federal or very diverse in nature, you might not just want to have it in one place, because that in itself facilitates inequality in that country, and which is another aspect of the whole thing that's just very cool to look into.
I have a question. Is it registered in one country just for one time, or can you?
No, actually.
How long does the program is working? For 2 days, 5 days, 10 days?
It depends. I mean, it's up to the countries. I think what has been most common is that, like, the embassy, they kind of together with Wikimedia first, they do a workshop, like with all the basic. You learn how to edit, what's Wikipedia, and then there's an event with more like the ambassador speaking, and then they write and maybe some media or something like that. But just as John is saying, we don't want to do this as a one-time show either. For us, it's important to continue the engagement, and that's why also we need a little bit new idea to spark new energy into the project, because we have done it now for two consecutive years. Some embassies are not yet on board, but many are on board, and they've done it in different cities with different thematics. You can have women in tech, you can have women in science, you can have women in peacekeeping, or women in whatever you want. And that's really cool. Also, what works in the local context.
I mean, the local ownership, but we've also seen different other types of events where it hasn't been like just focusing on writing. But there has been more seminars built, or other type of activities just to share, or you might not be ready to organize a full event, but you can still share the understanding of the problem. So they haven't had enough volunteers, for example, to actually teach 30 people how to edit, but they've had enough volunteers or interested people to organize a seminar, so they can at least get the word out about this. Here's an opportunity for the future. So continuing working with that and then building up capacity over time is super interesting.
Do you have data on who is editing then, or who is coming to the events? Because it would be really interesting for me, for example, to know, are these women who are writing, or are mostly male editors who come to those events? Because I think one issue is that, for example, especially if you host some events like Women in Science, which is great, just don't get it wrong, it's great, but you don't get the fact that traditional knowledge or invisible work that is done in many countries, like care work or traditional knowledge in household tasks, you can't capture this with these themes. And especially if you just have this concept of famous women around the world, you miss a lot of other women who are not captured in this.
Of course, I do totally agree. I mean, this is a way of trying to do something in the line, but of course in the whole foreign policy it's not only about WikiGap, it's much broader. But I don't know, maybe the data, you're the ones who have it, so I think all the data that we have here, I mean, like 2,500 volunteers, that's what we know between like how many have registered. I don't know whether we can find out if those were men or women, or where did they come from, but I know that was also like part of the local discussion. In Sweden, for instance, it was very important for us to have both men and women write editing, because for us, gender equality, it's very much a men's issue also, or primarily now here in my country. But in some countries, it's impossible to make an editathon with mixed group. Yes. Yeah. So it has to be like also adapted to the local context and what would work best. But in particular, I mean, this project didn't aim to increase the number of female editors. It was not our main objective. That's why we married so well with the UN Women Project in Middle East, North Africa, because they have exactly women, their focus is women editors. So we could connect our two projects and use the women editors to be the facilitators of our workshops, which is just like, you know, match made in heaven basically. And I just know by chance somebody who knew somebody, you know, networking basically. So yeah. But
to your direct question, if we have statistics, I mean, it's very limited because we don't collect data about the registered. We don't on Wikipedia we don't track it like that. There are some people, if they have really added that information, we can get that out, but it's only a few percentage of the registered participants that we have that for. We have not tracked at the different events, asked them to collect specific data about gender, which is something we have talked about, but.
We're a little bit slow in this, so like the instruction for us to understand that what you need to ask in the beginning of the workshop to make the data afterwards. I mean, you learn as you go. So I mean, these statistics, they're also, I think, really on the low, because there's so many events that weren't even like part of the WikiGap dashboard, and that depended on the editor or on the facilitator of the workshop. So
this is very much a federalized concept. We don't control the different group, as most of you here probably know, we don't control what they're doing locally. We provide them with this toolkit, and if the embassies, I guess, could make the head counts, but that's something this year we didn't have time to do it. First year we didn't really plan for that to happen. Hopefully, maybe if there's a request for
it. So the head counts that I'm basing this on is more like, okay, what the embassy reported back to me, how many people participated in the workshop. So it's also like, an approximate.
We can take this information the local communities. For example, we organized in Italy, in Rome and in Milan with the Swedish Association, and in Milan with the university, and there was something like a third of men and 2/3 of women. So we can prepare this kind of metrics, because it's important to have to know not only the number of participants, but also
definitely. I mean, I know a lot of the organized affiliates are doing that. I mean, we are doing it ourselves. Wikimedia Sweden is doing that when we have an event, every event.
Yes.
The problem has been, I mean, when there are not really, some we had in Afghanistan, there's no user group, there is no organized Wikimedia movement at all. To add that on top, it's something that can be added if it's a
And I would also like to add, like from a government perspective or from the Swedish perspective, it's not only about increasing representation of women on Wikipedia, which is great, but it's also for our embassy to get a complete new network with people that they usually don't meet or see. I mean, we usually always collaborate with the civil society in many ways, but I think like maybe we're a little bit traditional with what group we are working. So I think also for the embassies, there's a huge opportunity to get like new connections within your movement, who can learn us a lot about like the digital age and like information free, the importance of free information, and also to learn more about Wikipedia, because I work in a quite knowledgeable organization. People are they have very big diplomas and stuff, but very few people know actually how Wikimedia work.
It's a kind of advocacy.
Yeah, exactly. So that's an advocacy for you to notify people such as myself or colleagues from other countries, like how important this citizen-run tool is, like in today's world where we can see a lot of like other platforms having a lot of importance in the war of information, so to speak. So I think for us that has been also very important, very interesting to know more about your movement and the people who are part of that.
To connect to that, I mean, what Lina mentioned before about the media, the amount of media visibility with this project, I mean, it's huge. We know that. We know it's huge. We know there are hundreds of newspapers have written about this over a couple of years, but we haven't so far collected data about that. And this is also something that's a possibility of expanding the work together with the local affiliates and local communities just compiling that information, because how many people do we reach through this project? You know, like, not that are not at the event, but actually hear about the problem.
Because I think every single embassy, I mean, we were quite strong in PRs. They did a lot of like interviews and pushing it in the local newspapers. So I know about hundreds and 200s and 300s, including the Guardian and the Economist and Wall Street Journal and like big newspapers. So that's also, I mean, yeah, an extra added value which came with this project.
The community has a different perspective, and we know our issues. And we know what to looking for. So I think the community could help in this kind of information collecting data.
Yeah, and I hope also this is like something that's why it's so good if we continue and do it again. And in the countries like such as Italy, we've made it several times, because the first time it's learning for everyone, and then you know what your partner can do and what assets your partner have and how you can, I mean, make it stronger together, basically.
And just to add that, I mean, yesterday it was officially announced on stage and out of Magna that we will do a third year. So 2020's
coming up, yeah.
And the fourth and
the fourth and the fifth and so on. Yeah, I don't see anything that could hinder it. So I really hope so.
Should we take one more question and then ask Clara if you're not on stage?
And Felix also came here. Yeah.
Okay, so I think you were first. I think actually.
Yeah. Me? No, I was just I was kind of puzzled. But then I've been thinking about your comment on the focus wasn't on getting more editors, but just getting more articles published. And I thought that was interesting, but I thought, but you can't write an article without becoming an editor, so you get them. But I guess maybe it's the psychology of not putting the pressure on. Because if you have an event, any kind of event, you know, people come in and they feel, oh, I don't want to pressure, I have work to do, I have this. But maybe if they're just engaged in getting the articles, yes, they have to sign up. But then that becomes secondary, and maybe you have the local communities then can follow through and say, hey, didn't you enjoy that thing? Do you want to come back? Because now you have access to it. So it might have a secondary benefit to the local community, but in a sense, the WikiGap at a higher level is just concentrating on increasing the article number. So I just wondered if you had thoughts on like, not that I'm thinking wrong or correctly, but just wonder if that's kind of how you were thinking with that sort of thing.
You know what? I don't think we thought so much. We just like, yeah, let's do it. Articles, it's good, it's concrete, yeah. And then all these questions popped out quite early from the embassies. Okay, does this mean that we should only invite women to the workshops? And then very early we said no, not unless it's necessary for you to be able to have it at all, such as in, I don't know, Afghanistan or somewhere where you can't have mixed group.
Maybe I misunderstood the question, but so that I mean we don't have like there's no like a formal goal like you have to produce a certain amount of articles, you have to have a certain amount of people. We want to organize events where as many people as possible that fit within the venue show up, regardless of gender, to produce as many articles as possible to fill the gaps. And I mean that's a pretty clear goal to communicate. Just, you know, we're missing articles on Wikipedia. We want your help to fill that, regardless of who you are. So and was that, you know, the more people you can ask a question to help out, the more people respond.
And we don't want women islands.
No, exactly. I mean, if we should, I mean, this is very strong in our policy. It's like if you want gender equality, I mean, you also have to work with the men. Of course. Shall we? Did you have a last one before we?
Yeah, I could talk to you afterwards. Yeah, the first point I thought would be interesting to mention is exactly what's interesting to measure and also to see is how many follow up and maybe become contributors. And then I had a question, maybe more to you, to Utrikesdepartementet in Sweden, is like how do you decide? So this project, to me, like embassies have a role of maintaining diplomacy and then exerting soft power at the country abroad. And this is kind of more abstract because it's feminist soft power, but it's not really national soft power. So how is this like budgeted and decided, and which part? How is it decided how many employees should dedicate their time to this in Swedish embassies? It's interesting, I think, because there's never enough resources in embassy networks. Usually, they always complain that their resources are kept.
Well, I guess it's always about prioritizations. Okay, so first, your question. Can I answer that last question first, and you answer the data question, like how many who become like more steady? For us, yeah, this is part of the public diplomacy budget, but it's like a very small budget because it's split from all the embassies and so on. I think that we are looking at an era where we have to find concrete ways of trying to show what we want to say. And we have been working, I mean, all countries basically, I mean, we've been working, of course, Utrikesdepartementet and the embassies, their main role is to be the link between the government in the country and Sweden. But I mean, for a very long time, you work with public diplomacy, including civil society, other groups, especially in countries where it's difficult to talk maybe about gender equality. It's also a way for us to support this issue through forces that we believe should be supported, basically. Yes. And I think also when it comes to that, I mean, we've seen that in some communities where it's been difficult for you to work with gender equality, this was a little bit way in for them to do something about it also.
And I think, I mean, to your question about like how it's been working, since all the embassies, as Lina mentioned, are individual authorities that decide, they have their own budgets and stuff. They have some self decision.
Yeah.
But since we have created this toolkit, the threshold of organizing an event,
really
especially if we provide them with volunteers that are willing to do some of the heavy lifting, suddenly it's not that expensive anymore. So it's been yeah, I think it was a very interesting.
No, I mean, because otherwise they will be asked to pop up their own ideas, like, okay, what can you do to get to the youth, to the young people, to increase gender equality in your country? And here we come. We have this concept. It's great. Here's the person you can call. Here's the toolkit. Here's the animation. Here's the speech for the minister. Here's blah, blah, blah. Everything is made for them. So it's very easy.
Make it easy.
Yeah.
One of the things I've been doing in New York City, young filmmakers, every year they do a Kwanzaa Film Festival, and they add me to the program. And what I do is I share what I do with Wikipedia as a skill to help young artists who do documentaries how to use Wikipedia. So I've done it 2 years in a row, and they usually have me every year. And I went to one of your editathons, the one you had last year.
In New York?
Yes, so
I think
I've
there's
been to a lot of your WikiGap events. In fact, we tutored someone at your event 2 years ago. Even though the person doesn't do a lot of editing, we've discovered that what's more important is to keep the person engaged.
Yeah.
Because sometimes we have events, a person will come once to an editathon in New York and we don't see him anymore.
Yeah.
So we don't know what happens to that person. So I think the approach I've taken now is to keep the channel open. And in fact, we tutored someone, and what was so weird, last March, the person was able to make it to the Wikimania in South Africa last year.
Oh.
Brilliant.
And the same person we tutored and mentored wrote a proposal for this one that was accepted. So it was all about keeping the channel open. And then also I think a lot of people, it's like getting to what they're doing. How do I connect what I do to what they do? They may not be able to do a lot of edits. So then I have to come up with other possibilities, like add photos. I'm starting to have more workshops in my community in New York where I train people just to add references from books. We go to the index of books and teach them how to just be reference editors. And then one time we had an event, they were trying to get people to edit existing articles. So it was this one woman I sat down with, I just showed her how to add categories for about an hour, and she just loved it. She says, I feel like I'm indexing. So now she can work by herself.
Yeah.
So it's finding different ways to engage people and to keep the channels open. So even if they're not editing, there's other possibilities that they can do. And then also people who can't edit, if they're dealing with a young population, I have recommended to some of the people that I've mentored, just show a lot of YouTube clips. Just show them the terrain, you know, little videos at a time, and then document that process. And then later, the editing and that come later.
That's very interesting.
Yeah.
Should we just quickly answer your question about the data? We have the program event dashboard that we ask every organizer to add their participants, so we have the data, how many people are continuous editing. That is not, of course, including what you're talking about, how many people come out and still are involved in the movement and care about free knowledge and do something with it.
Which could also be interesting, sorry, because I'm not editing, but I feel myself now, after 3 years,
You are a Wikimedia now.
like part a little bit of the moves I can advocate for you in my channels. I mean, that could be kind of important for you. Like, I mean, so it's not maybe only to look at the hard facts, like how many is actually, also like the broader picture.
Exactly. And if you keep the channel open, you got an advocate for Wikipedia rather than someone that shows up at an event and gets turned off.
Exactly.
So I'd rather keep the channel open, even though the person didn't edit that much. There are other ways that they will be an advocate for what we do, rather than a turn off.
Absolutely. So I would like to invite Claudia to the stage to talk a little bit about we have asked Claudia and Felix in the back there to tell a little bit about their experiences from their context. A short presentation each, and then after that we have a little bit of a workshop session just where we will ask all of you to kind of, it's the 20-minute version of it, just stop down in groups your ideas in the Etherpad. We will split you up in 4 groups afterwards. So but first, Claudia, please.
Yeah, so I keep it really short because I have the feeling there's a lot of expertise in this room on the topic, whether with WikiGap or other women editing events, and I would love to hear even more voices. Like, I'm only one voice in one corner of the world, and I want to build on a lot what you said, because when we did our editathon in Vienna together with the Swedish embassy there, we came to the conclusion, or like we as a chapter came to the conclusion even before, but the embassy agreed with us, if we want to increase the content of women, we need more allies in that. So for us it was not only about the content, but also about outreach and finding new people working with us on these topics, because at least in the German-speaking world, we do not have enough people who think this is a priority at the moment, right? So we also made it very much an outreach event and had like a twofold concept. Like at the beginning, we had a discussion, also what you said, like it doesn't only have to be about the hard facts, how to edit and get to the content, but at the beginning, get people into the right mindset, why we are all here, what is the bigger challenge. And the embassy helped us to get a really like cool panel with like the ambassador of Canada, somebody from the UN, because Vienna is also a UN city. So that helped us to get even more stakeholders in that diplomatic area, being aware of like us as a charity, us as a civil society movement, what we're doing on the internet. So that was very helpful. And then we decided our target group would be young diplomats and people who study politics. So we made our topic for our editathon women in international relations. So we partnered with universities where people study subjects related to that, but also with the Academy for Young Diplomats in Vienna, and some students' organizations that they have that are also fighting for gender equality in their area of work. So that was a really good match, and we found some really good people there, and we also made sure that hopefully this will be lasting contacts that not only go into one event, but after that. But I also see the biggest challenge here, because we just know from experience, like editathons are really cool to get attention, to get media attention, to build new partnerships, but this is, at least in the German-speaking world, not where the bulk of content is created, because it is a really steep learning curve for people to know how to edit. So we also split up in like, together writing a whole article and micro edits, like micro contribution, like small things that you can do to existing material to keep the barrier low, but then engaging them beyond the event, that's usually where it becomes difficult. That's why this year I love to see the WikiGap challenge that went a bit beyond only one event, but spread over a month, where you could engage people. But I think that's probably something we can think about together more, how we can make it a bit of a more regular interaction that keeps people engaged over time. And I think there's a lot of learning from Sweden as well on gender gap activities that you had even before, where you see like in Gothenburg, where you have this regular wiki meetup on people who write on that topic. This is how you retain editors, if they have a regular place to go to when they run into problems, if they have more questions. Right. Because usually after one afternoon, most people, at least in the big Wikipedias, are not able to do it on their own, because it's too complex. There are too many toxic people out there. That they need to be, they need their solidarity networks, and they need to be built, and one afternoon is just not enough. So this is one of the challenges. And one more challenge I want to, and then I finish, unless there are questions, because I really want to hear more other opinions as well, and also from Felix. Something like the biggest challenge, I think, also in the cooperation with the embassy was how we define the gender gap here and what is a gender. And I just realized that the understanding, at least in the Viennese embassy, also when it comes to language, is very binary. And that's where we clash, because Wikimedia Austria is the first organization in the Wikiverse where we made a lot of effort to put all of our public documents in inclusive language, which makes, for English speakers, not a lot of sense, because English is not so much of a gender language. German is very much. And also when you become gendered in your language, to not make it binary, but there are ways to symbolize that you're including all genders, and that this is not only male and female, but there's a lot of things in between. And the Swedish embassy in Germany did not have rules in their communications department on how they deal with it, or they did it in a very classical way. And we very much insisted on doing it in a more inclusive way, because I wanted to not only invite women, I wanted to invite all genders that are marginalized. And that was a bit of a not easy point to work through. Like, they were very open to all the ideas, but we could see that in the detail, like we were allies on the larger topic, but when you go into detail, we could just see that there's not a full alignment yet, and that manifested itself in the language of the press release, for example. And that's something I hope that we can also include into the concept, probably a bit more openly, that we are waving the LGBT+ flag here, and that we are open to all different kinds of sexual identities, and that it's not only women and girls in the classic binary sense. So that would be something that I would be very happy about. In Vienna, we've made first baby steps into a common direction here, but I would also love to see slides like this, the tool set having little asterisk stars, for example, when there's a woman, just make the star there to make sure that everybody feels invited to join the initiative. So that's a challenge, and also a wish that I would like to bring. And I stop here unless there are questions, and would hand then over to Felix and this. Okay.
Thank you so much, Claudia.
Right. Now it's hard coming to present after something like that, but we'll see. Okay, so I'm Felix, and I work on WikiGap in Sudan. I'm actually from Ghana, but I put up my name for any WikiGap activity happening anywhere in the world. And Sudan came up, and I was invited. And so for me, the first question is, how are we curating a list of people who are interested to lead WikiGap activities all around the world? Maybe that should be the first thing that maybe Wikimedia Sweden should look at. It's very important. The second thing is, because I don't have a Swedish embassy in my country, I couldn't host a WikiGap. And so can we work with the Nordic embassies in countries that have Nordic embassy presence to be able to have WikiGap? It's also very important. Now in Sudan, we organized an event for about 30 people, and 99% of the people were female. We tried so hard to bring in females, and we succeeded. Now, in going to the event, what I did was I basically did my research on all articles that existed on Sudanese women, and the target was to improve those articles by 30%. And so in going into the training, we already knew that these articles had articles on English Wikipedia, but did not have maybe on Arabic Wikipedia, which was more relevant to the people in Sudan. And so we did translations of those articles into Arabic, and we did write on new people as well. At the end of the day, we created 30% more articles of what existed before, and I thought that was a great feat for us to achieve. We we also partnered with other agencies like Ericsson, and I don't know if it's Zain. Zain, it's a telecommunication company. I don't know the real name, but I think it's Zain. And what we tried to do was to ensure that the thing we had done in Sudan was not the end, and that it was going to continue. And so we also partnered with Impact Hub in Sudan, and we got a space for those that we trained. And these people have been going there to have regular trainings. I'm still in contact with the community over there, and I'm going back sometime later this year to have a training session to ensure that these people will not need me next year, and they will be able to carry on with the training by themselves. However, I just wanted to highlight a little small thing about editathons. It's not always crucial that people that you train must stay behind, because not everybody will stay behind. Some people just jump on the bandwagon whenever there's an event. It's normal, it's okay. Once we achieve the purpose of the event, I think it's important. And so don't let us focus too much on getting people to stay, because that drains out people. just focus on what you want to achieve as a goal of the event, and when you achieve that, that's good enough. So I think that is my addition to what you have said. I think you've said a lot already, so.
Can I add to that last point? I think user Lina from France made it very clear at one point that retention should not be a success metric of an event, because that's nothing we can achieve. Retention is a success metric for us as a community, and not for the event organizer. And that speaks very much to that. If volunteers organize something, that can be a bit of a letdown. It's like, oh, it was not successful because not 90% of people stayed editing. We want to have more people, but this should not be the success metric of the event, because that's nothing you can achieve there alone. Because if they're burned afterwards by toxic people, there's nothing, like, you can have a beautiful event and it still happens, right? So I very much agree with you.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense as well. Thanks for the contribution.
So last thing, something we need to deal with was the date. 8th of March. In March, 8th of March, we have art and feminism, WikiGap, a lot of events when everybody wants to be present on this day. I want to say that WikiGap can be organized
Every day.
Every day.
This year we cannot done this editathon with UNESCO. We missed this, but we have the next one in September in Rome and in November in Trieste. So it's not for not to be in March. So it could be.
I understand, but also I want to challenge that a little bit, because there, you can do it every day, of course, but there's also many communities and countries where the 8th of March is not significant, you know. In other words, but I do agree with you. I mean, we shouldn't put all our resources on one day.
Yes, for us it was
But I also think that's the reason why you had the challenge, because then it extended beyond the 8th of March. And if we can put that as a core of the campaign, it will still yield the same purpose that we want.
I think also we had, what we've done also over the year, both of the years, has been that it's, please what if you're comfortable with. So over the years, I mean, we've had a WikiGap on the 8th of March as the kind of official launching date, where we say, ask the embassy to do it, and also as a way of getting them interested. But a lot of the embassies and a lot of the local communities has decided we don't want to do the 8th of March. So there has been events across the year as well, which is not at all against the spirit of WikiGap, I would say. I think that's perfectly in line with that. Because again, it's the local communities and the local embassy and the local partners that should decide, it's not us, right? So we support, if they want to do it in October, we support them to do that. And we try to be clear about communicating that. And if we have failed to do that, we will do better.
But you can, I mean, working in communication, you have to say things like 100 times.
Exactly.
But I really want to say, you can do it whenever. So check with your local, whatever works locally best.
One of the things that we do in New York, we have a lot of different groups that promote events. And I started 4 years ago, but I think what really kept me going was participating at the different events, like how to use my sandbox to add more than one, you know what I mean, how to do reference. So I was always able to find an event that I can fit in my schedule to keep growing. And so some of the times we have a person that might come once, and I might see them in the community, and I'll say, oh, don't worry, there's always an event you can go to grow on what you were exposed to. So I try not to pressure people, because some people, you know, you want, like we said before, you want to keep people, you want them, because they will advocate for you if they had a positive experience. So the thing is not to turn people off.
And if I can just answer, I agree totally. And if I can answer on the LGBTI questions, I totally agree with you. I do understand that also within our network, it's, I mean, different levels of understanding. But from Stockholm headquarters, I think it's very clearly, we have the motto of mod och tålamod, courage and patience. So continue to be the people who bring those questions up. Like, because I think policy-wise, we have nothing against it. Like, we are in line with that, so that should be.
And it would help, I think, if also the materials were
of
already
course, the
reflected,
materials.
because then people, because in some countries they might need a site, might think of it yet, and
exactly.
That's an inspiration.
That's a really good.
Just like think about inclusive language. that this is an inspiration and yeah,
It's
some
really
advice.
inspirational as you present your stuff in your Wikipedia page, for instance. You do it, yeah. Ni gör det. Yes, please.
I look forward to reading the template about what the WikiGap kit, but when you've had the events, is the main focus that it has to be face-to-face, or did you support streaming, so somebody that maybe for health reasons couldn't come, or just because they live in some remote town they can't come? Did you do anything like that? Or?
Not that I'm aware of.
Well, I mean, the first event in both India and in Washington, we streamed between
Stockholm and the city.
I don't remember if that was open. If it was just us having the link, or if we spread the link.
No, I think it was open. So we had I mean, they started in New Delhi and then we continued in Stockholm, back to back, kind of. No, I think we haven't explored that so much. Our main challenge has been like that. The internet is not good enough in many locations, so from there to streaming. But I mean, we're very open to explore that in locations where there is good infrastructure for those things. Yeah, there's nothing against it. As I tried to say, I mean, the concept is very malleable, so it's very flexible, so you can take it and do whatever. And we tried to do that with the WikiGap challenge, which was like a digital challenge, so you didn't need to meet up afterwards, like to kind of, continue the engagement also. And I think the winner, he never participated in the physical event.
No. I think most of the people that was involved in the WikiGap challenge were from the active community. Or at least the majority of them were. And they came on board through that online event, which was, I think, a great benefit. But I do think there's a lot of things to explore there. And I think, as I can just say, as Wikimedia Sweden, we haven't done enough of that. I mean, we try to stream things, but we don't have like a platform or a complete plan on how to engage with communities that are, if we have 50 people that are spread in 50 different places in Sweden, I would not know how to coordinate that. I mean, I don't have a model on how to organize an event like that. So that's something we could explore together. I think it's a very interesting concept. If you want to support them and help them and teach them at the same time. If they're experts, then it's easy. But if it's newbies.
Just a comment to my own comment, and in case everybody else has an answer. We had an event on the 8th of March, and I had helped to curate 1,200 names of women that we just wanted to have Danish women, wanted to really try to focus on them as much as we could. And that was all hand curated, and then the place that was helping to organize it, they published this on paper, and then we were checking it off. So we suddenly were stuck when people said we want to do it online. We said, we have it all on paper. How do we communicate? Because then people were coming up and said, oh, I want to take this person. I want to write about a woman painter. Or I want to write about a woman filmmaker, kind of thing. And we could handle that in the room on paper, but to include somebody offline, or what do you call it, on the internet somewhere else, we just couldn't do it. We just said, sorry, we're not prepared for that. So that would have to be planned. How would we do it? We thought maybe we could have a spreadsheet of some kind online, but then again, if you have multiple checkers, that helpers at the location, and then how do you let the person in that far off village check in? So we just couldn't wrap our heads around it, and that would be the challenge for the next time we do something like that. Yeah. How do you allow it? One thing is the streaming, but then what if somebody far away is doing on person A, and then somebody in the room is doing person A, and you have a conflict?
Exactly, yeah.
I don't know how to do that yet.
Yeah.
That's the $1 million question. We heard yesterday that this was a climate neutral conference, and I'm thinking that you might all have been taking the plane here, for instance. I mean, so we in our organization, we just like constantly fight. How can we make these things happen, like this exchange, but people not having to travel from over 100 places of the world. And I mean, so far there, I don't think there is a good tool. I mean, the human connection kind of. Yeah, Felix.
Yeah, I just had one point to reiterate. Like I mentioned it earlier on, but I think I mentioned it Saturday. People are asking, like I've had a lot of requests, how I went to Sudan and did this. People want to go to other neighboring countries to do this, but they don't know how to go about the process. So maybe if you can create a process of embassies that need this and the request for those who want to go, it will help the Wikimedia community, because we have a lot of volunteers. Yeah,
that was, I think, the way it was managed the first year, like that we Wikimedia Sweden sent out a request from everybody, and then we linked interested parties together, and that's our support. But this year was a little bit a middle year, but yeah, next year I think that's also a good way of doing it. And just to answer your question, where we talked about it yesterday, you can do it with anyone else, like the Nordic embassies. And I know that in some countries it's difficult to have, I mean, you cannot just walk into the embassy, so that's why we're here too, to kind of provide a institutional face and connection that could help you. So I mean, don't hesitate to reach out if that's the thing in your country, if that's a challenge in your context.
And with that, I think you have to run.
Yes, I have to run to another panel.
I'm happy to answer a few more questions, and just to add to Felix, one of the
Thank you so much.
Just to add to Felix's point there about the funding opportunities, that is something we also need to explore together. There is not a huge amount of money laying around at the ministry to like pay for trips everywhere. It's something we had negotiated every single time we had something going out. And that's just, or Wikimedia Sweden could cover some, but we can send people across the world. So how do we do that as not as just Wikimedia Sweden and the ministry, but as a movement? How can we support setting up, if we have in a regional setting, what can be done together there? Is there support to get from that, or I feel it's in that region, or should does it have to come from Stockholm? Could be, but it's going to be much more limited than it could be otherwise. So I think there's possibilities there to continue the discussion on how shared ownership again. Like right now we are coordinating with the ministry, but it doesn't have to be. Especially, I mean, we have had requests from. I mean, we're working with UNESCO, as we already said, and we're coordinating with them as well. But that's another section. I mean, but that is also owned now internally at UNESCO to a large degree. We had requests from the Canadian embassies what they could do together around this. We haven't been able to like work on that yet, but I think there's a lot of different embassies out there, or like other foreign services that are interested in doing similar activities. And I think there's a lot of other actors that are interested in doing similar activities. So you can probably find a lot of other possibilities, as Lina was saying, utilizing the toolkit and kind of running it quite independently. I mean, we would like to coordinate, of course, because it's just so much more interesting if you have a plentiful, beautiful mix of things happening. But we don't have to own it at all. We don't want to own it.
You can do a lot of things, but can you help us to find sponsors?
I mean, we would love to try. I mean, again, like Wikimedia Sweden, we're not that huge. I mean, so we don't have that many sponsors. But
only to cover the expenses of lunch. We don't need.
I think there's like I think there's because Lina mentioned Ericsson, for example. I mean, there's a huge Swedish telecom company that has already decided to step in. We have not reached out to all the Swedish companies. It's just been ad hoc when someone has been had a contact locally. That of course could be done more coordinated as well. So
Ericsson is located in Rome, so
they're everywhere. Yeah,
should be.
So
yeah, I don't know if there is any. Like I don't see them myself, but I can think that when Swedish government is sponsoring redaction of Wikipedia articles, it's already, I guess some countries might interpret it as aggressive diplomacy, and that's already something I wouldn't see as aggressive diplomacy, because I don't see, as long as the articles are good. But if you start to include Ericsson or other private like how do you deal with probable, like, not criticism, but it's going to come around this?
Well, that's a relevant question, and I think what we've really been urging, or like it's been very clear, and what I think the minister has been extremely good at, has been making sure that no Swedish diplomats is editing. Their staff members do not edit, which of course is in one way a limitation, because we're not having good quality, educated people not contributing. But it's a very active choice not to create the feeling that Swedish propaganda is happening at the embassy staff is writing. To avoid that, they are not doing it. They're not touching the articles. They are only facilitating. They're helping. So, and it's owned by the community locally that decide what's going to happen. So, and for us, that was like, cool. We're not going to do this with them, even if it's a fantastic opportunity. If this was not like really set in stone from the very, very beginning, and they have been 100% on board with that. It seemed like with our point of views that it cannot happen. And I think the same thing with companies. If we bring in Ericsson, it's not about writing articles about Ericsson and former famous employees or something like that. It has to be a very thoughtful discussion around that. And I think that is something we also need to maybe find the frameworks around how to do that as a community. I mean, I myself struggle with that. If we want to engage with companies, to what extent should we do that as an affiliate? That's I have that in my head all the time. We have offers to do things all the time, but we turn down most of it because I don't have like, you know, a set structure that I feel comfortable working with them. That doesn't take too much, you know, work time. So I think that's going to be a problem wherever we do it. But
yeah, I think it's all about perception. I mean, Jeff Bezos on the Washington Post, that doesn't mean that he hires Amazon employees to write the articles, but that still sheds some doubt on everything that. So it's a bigger problem than actually.
It's only the community perception, because the lists are done by us, by every community. So the list to articles to be written. So it's not someone from outside who comes and forces us to write about this article in particular.
Yeah, but I mean, every Wikipedian, people Wikipedia are not made of thin air. Everyone is also part of our communities. So Lina says she's also a Wikipedia editor. She works for Ministry of Foreign Affairs. I might work for Ericsson and edit during the night. So it's a broader issue, I think, and I think it's not as easily answered as just we have these short guidelines that solve the problem. It's more an ongoing thing, and it might be really well handled by the community, but might still, the perception might still be undermined, so it's a more complex topic. You have really good journalists working for newspapers that get bought by billionaires, but still have the same work ethic. The trust doesn't remain because of this process.
I mean, I think there are always risks with things, but you have to weigh the risk versus the benefits. I think here the benefits outweigh the risk multiple, in my opinion. I mean, that's my perception, because we have had a very clear communication around it to minimize the risk. We've had a very clear definition or agreement who's going to do what, so we don't overstep and create unnecessary confusion. And we've tried very actively to engage or ensure that the local volunteer communities are the one owning it, and that the organization that we're partnering with are from the NGO sector, from the university sector, that comes in and bring new knowledge and new perspective and new resources to make sure it's not like perceived like, oh, this is the Swedish embassies are sitting there writing themselves, but it's 24 new people coming in. If it solves everything, absolutely not. I mean, you can always discuss risk, but I do think it's.
Yeah, I'm not just saying.
No, and I think it's a valuable.
It's an interesting and it's so complex.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree. But it's something relevant to keep in mind. If we don't keep it in mind all the time, as you're pointing correctly out, then we risk going into a minefield. But as long as we do and we carefully communicate, I see the benefits being very, very large.
Thank you, John.
Thank you so much, guys. A quick point of order. Sorry.
Yeah, come on.
It's a quick point of order. In the Etherpad, I put in 4 questions that we would love to have your help with answering. We had such a good discussion, we didn't want to break it to have a workshop as we originally planned. But if you have ideas that you want to share, you please add it there, or just email me or Lina, and we will make sure to try to see what we can do around integrating that into the next year's WikiGap.